thank everyone that's on this session this afternoon, taking some time out. Excuse me. Also, for those who may watch this, in an archive form, just thank you for taking time and seeing the need for being a part of this dialogue. So I have to be honest with you. I work for and with Mission Empower for about 8 years. And over the last couple of years, I've been continuing to work as a consultant and friend of the program with Mission Empower on topics that are helpful and maybe that I might have some level of expertise or experience in. And this is another one of those. Another point of honesty is that I did write the narrative and the title for this particular session today. Some of you that know me know I'm just edgy enough to push the envelope just short of crazy. And I did that intentionally. And I want to, because I think we need to be intentional in the times that we're in. I think we need to be very direct about certain things. And I think it's to be able to get someone's attention, if it's with a title or a piece of content or information, sometimes even with, a demonstration or some kind of overt attention getter. I think that's extremely important if it's done properly, done appropriately, and done in a way that is beneficial in the long run. And so that was my endeavor. I was intentional to ask the question of all those who would read that narrative or get the email, what race are you in? And if we'd be honest, many of us, really jumped in on thinking that I'm talking about some ethnic background or our ethnicity or what we consider and use the term to identify ethnic differences as race. I will throw out, not to be overly deep about it or philosophical about it, but race really is a kind of a man-made construct that has been used to divide people of varying hues and skin colors. And so there's one race that I really want to talk about today. And I want to sound philosophical or cliche-ish, but the human race, and I want to discuss our humanity. I want to have dialogue with us today on how we can be our best and how we can identify and not run from our differences, but see the beauty of them and be able to come together to make this this array of greatness that looks different from different perspectives. So that's kind of my philosophical soapbox for a minute. So the race that I really want to talk about and I want to question individuals on today is when I use the term race at this point, moving from that, again, ethnic background, ethnic piece, and even the human piece, I want to use the other tense or the term or use of the word race, R-A-C-E, which is a competitive or a competition to try and reach a goal. I want to take the term race and use it overtly, but use it uniquely in this instance to say that we are all in a race towards something. Sometimes it's, the race towards, different career goals, and you're striving and you're in the race to try to, get to be the best that you can in your vocation or your career, or you have a race of things you're trying to do and you're trying to get your family to a certain level or raise your children and get the information to them that is necessary. You're kind of in a race to get to this particular end. I've been really big on gardening the last couple of years, and this year is just like super overload. And I had all these seed and all these already started plants, and I was in a race to get them in the ground. Like I really wanted to get them in the ground so they can really start to flourish and grow and have the space to expand. And I couldn't take my time. I had to be intentional in identifying when I wanted to have it done to the best of my ability. And then what did I need to do and what did I need to put in place to reach that goal, to get to that ending? And we have to identify as a community. And yes, this is a global issue, and we have issues around disproportionality for certain groups of people, for African Americans, for women, for brown and Latino men and women in our country, Native American. But we also have issues around socioeconomic diversions or differences, excuse me. You know, how much money you make, you know, the haves and the quote unquote have nots. There's a lot of diversity in our community. And the reality is that we cannot, if we're going to be successful and we're going to be all that we can be, we have to find ways of acknowledging the differences, but not allowing the differences to divide us in a way that we won't, as a group, as a community, as a human family, be able to get to the design end. There's a phrase that Dr. Martin Luther King used, and others that were fighting in their own spheres. Gandhi was another example to use this phrase or some variation of it, talking about the beloved community or the beloved community. And that is a concept that no matter how, and Dr. King put it this way, that we would be judged and evaluated by the content of our character and not by the color of our skin. And so I think it's important that we have that goal in mind and we do what we need to do to race towards achieving that goal. And every generation has had its variation of what we're talking about today. We don't have to go as far back as slavery. We don't have to go as far back as even women's suffrage. We don't have to go as far back as, or we could go as far back as, you know, the disability rights work that was being done to be able to get legislation passed so that individuals with, I don't like the term disabilities, but I guess that's the technical term, but with unique abilities to be able to have rights and to be able to have programming and put in policies in place so that our differences aren't minimizing us and allowing us to be minimized in society. This is not new to 2020. This is not new. Like COVID didn't bring this along with it. It is not a COVID byproduct. This is something that we as a family, and when I use those words intentionally, purposefully, and sincerely, we as a family have all of these unique variations of us. And if we're not careful, we will allow our uniqueness to be seen as negative. And that's what we're dealing with in our society today, is that our uniqueness and our variations have been seen as negative and have been used as divisive to keep us from, in my opinion, aspiring and reaching to that beloved community where we really are able, with programs in place and with the playing floor of opportunities being equal and even as much as possible, everyone doesn't have that fair shake and fair opportunity. Again, race. We are in a competition. We should be competing with each other to get to this design in this destined place, to get to this beloved community, this concept where we are all able to grow and thrive and be our best selves. A little bit about me as directed in a part of this conversation is that in high school and even in college, and I like to think even now, I was a pretty good athlete. I played, you know, football and basketball and ran track in high school and college. And I remember and I also coached track and football and basketball as an adult. And unique to track, and when I use track, because we're talking about race, there are several different events. And if you have track and then you have track and field, you have the field events, the throwing, the jumping. I want to focus on the racing and the running events and the track events for a moment. The shorter the race, the shorter the race in a track meet, for example, the 100 meters, the 200 meter, even the 400 meter race, the individuals participating have to stay in their lane. They have to stay in their unique, designated, identified space for the length of that competition. The longer the races are, the more it gets to a point, the more that, the runners, in order to be successful, actually come out of their individual lanes at a certain point and begin to run as a group and actually move towards the finish line, move toward the goal collectively. If you've ever watched a track meet, again, you watch that 100 meter, and you got the fastest men and women flying for 100 meters from a starting block to a ribbon, straight away. You go to 200 meters, they're halfway around the turn, and they're coming around and they're meeting that 200 meter goal, and it's straight away, stay in your lane. And even that one full lap of 400 meters, you have to stay in your lane. Watch this, or you're disqualified because you're not in your right lane. I want to push us to understand that to be able to strive for and to reach this idea of the beloved community, this place where all of our uniqueness is valued and appreciated. And we have watch this, the courage, family, to have hard conversations in order to be able to be successful at reaching that goal. In order for us to do that, we have to realize this is a long-term venture. This is a long-term adventure to be able to reach that goal. And so this is not the 100 to 200 to 300 to 400. It's not the hurdles. This is like the 3,200 race. This is like the 2-mile race. This is a long distance race that we have to, at a certain point, come together, meld together as a group so that we can all get to where we're trying to go. And I'll give a little bit more on this analogy. When the group comes together, after a lap or so in those long races, the group then has the opportunity to meld together, to come together. And what happens is they get to the inside of the track and they clump together. And the mere fact that they're running together inspires everyone in that group to run harder, because you want it paces the group. And so there are some that, as we know, that kind of just dart out and they just keep the pace and they're ahead of everyone. But the majority, and then there's some that lag behind that can't keep pace with everyone else. But the majority of people in those races are clumped together. And yes, while they're in those groups, they're bumping, they're jockeying for position, they're trying to get to their best role in their best position that they can in the group. But at the end of the day, it's not okay for me to trip you, even though we're both trying to get to the same place. It's not okay for me to bump you and knock you out into the middle of the infield because you're getting a little bit ahead of me. Actually, if I'm wise and cautious, I will do a couple of things in this race. I will learn how to conserve my energy for when it's the right time to exert my strength. If there's someone who's faster and there's a couple folks that are way ahead, and I will actually use them as a goal and a marker to try to increase my pace when I'm able to do so. But watch this, even those that are lagging behind, that lagging behind group are actually using those ahead of them to as a goal, a marker to get to, so that they can be successful and do their part. And watch this, reach the finish line. The goal is of course, we want to get there first. But the greater goal in that kind of situation is that we all get there. Some of you have seen, whether it be Olympic meets or track meets in the college, high school level, where, a person trips and falls and they, sprain their knee or they hurt their ankle, and someone comes and helps them finish their race. You know what I mean? Some people have even foregone winning first place to help someone they cared about just simply finish the race. Or they finish their leg and they finish their part and they run back out and they help someone else across the finish line. This race that I'm talking about is not who's there first, but the race that I want us to really look at is that we all get there, and that we all are there, whether you're first in the pack or if you're coming in last, that we all get there. Where is the there? The there is when I see you as a Black man and I look at you as a white woman or a white man or a Native American or a Hispanic and Latino man or woman. I see the beauty of you. I see your humanity. I see your gifts and your talents. And not just, watch this, not exclusive of your color, because your color is beautiful. But I don't let your color, if it's different than mine, determine how I think about you simply because of that. We are in this race together. We are in this goal together, because at the end of the day, if I don't make it, you're not going to make it. Oh, what do you mean? I'm doing my thing. I'm in my own world. But we are inexplicably tied together. And I think as Dr. King has said that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. If today it is one group that is being vilified or is receiving a lack of due justice and due opportunity and support that is needed, tomorrow it could be a group that you're a part of. And so I think it's important that we understand that we are inexplicably tied together. We are connected. We are one, and we are in this race. So the question again, what race are you in? I'm not talking about your ethnicity. I honor that. You know what I mean? Like Italian Man of the Year, like in Erie, there's like Italian Man of the Year awards and the Polish Woman of the Year and all that's amazing. You know what I mean? I need to start like the Black Man of the Year award and nominate myself. I was trying to make you all smile. You're looking too serious. But there's nothing wrong with recognizing and walking in the beauty of our uniqueness. But our uniqueness is to be brought to the table to add to the bouquet of our life's experience and opportunities. And because you're white, shouldn't mean that you get a lesser opportunity. Because you're a woman, shouldn't mean that you get a lesser opportunity. Watch this. Because you have reading or dyslexic reading difficulties doesn't mean you shouldn't get an opportunity. Just because you are in special education and you're receiving services because, excuse me, that because certain things that you're experiencing, maybe traumas, maybe it's even some chemical imbalances, whatever it might be, just because you have those differences doesn't mean you shouldn't get a fair and appropriate public education. And so what we're talking about today is this race for success, the race for success and opportunity for all of us that are here in our community. And I'll close with this and I'll open up for dialogue because I'm a dialogue person and I think it's important to have conversation and not just me monologue at you. If we're going to be, since we're going to be successful in this endeavor as a family, as a human race, as a people, since we're going to be successful, it's going to take courageous action. It's going to cause us to have conversations that are difficult to have. It's going to cause us to be able to have to set some things that are in place, that are out of place, in place, and then put the ointment and the physical therapy and the treatment on that thing so that it can heal and the person can become whole, our family can become whole again. And to reset a broken bone is painful, but it's necessary if it's going to heal properly. And and I'm challenging us on this call. I'm challenging respectfully many others in our community, not just locally in Erie, but around the world. If I have that kind of a platform at some point to be able to say, we have to do this hard work and we have to have the conversations that we have historically put aside because it hurts to reset our own thinking. It hurts to reset our own efforts and our own biases. I have biases. Can I be real transparent? When I look at I was at the garden the other day and a little boy actually driving by, headed to the garden yesterday. It was beautiful out, sunny, wonderful temperature out, and there were 3 little African-American black children playing with the hose, shirts off and just shorts, 3 little boys running around. And for me, it totally took me back, I won't say how many years, but a couple of decades ago when I was that age. And my brothers and I were running around, spraying each other with the hose, hoping that we didn't run into my mom's flowers. And I had a moment where I had a direct connection to them, not just because they were kids, but because they were boys and they were little black boys. I'm being very candid when I say that. I'm not, mixing my words, because that's what I was. I was a little black boy that grew up into a black man, and I related to that. There's nothing wrong with that. The problem is our biases or our unique experiences. When we see someone outside of that and we vilify them, that's where our differences become a problem. If I would have seen 3 little white boys or Hispanic or Latino boys or Native American boys or 3 little girls doing that, and this is so stupid, that's so trifling. Look at those parents, they don't control their children. Why are they out there in the yard playing? simply because they didn't look like me or my sons or my brothers when we were doing the same thing, that's where we begin to have problems in our community. Just because I learn differently doesn't mean I can't learn, and it doesn't mean that I should not have the opportunities and the tools in place for me to learn the best way that I know how, or the best way that I can. And so I'll kind of end with that, and I will say, we can do this. This race is a race that must be won. I want to challenge us, again, in this closing kind of monologue piece, challenge us to identify what race are you running. Honor your own ethnicity, your own culture, your own heritage, but also understand that it is a component part of the greater human and global heritage and global family that we're all a part of, and have the courage to reset things that are broken and reset things that are set wrongly. Be willing to challenge your own thinking. Be willing to shift the paradigm of your own thinking. Be willing to expand your comfort zone and ingratiate yourself with someone or some folks that don't look like you, that don't think like you, that don't learn like you, that don't make money like you, or whatever those variations of our human experience might be. We have to do that, and we have to be intentional, because every once in a while an athlete will win a race on accident. But usually those that are successful at reaching a goal, whether it be a race, a business, some aspiration, there's some intentionality involved, and there's some effort. There's some sweaty workout sessions. There's some workouts that you wake up sore in the morning and it hurts, but you go back to the gym, you go back to the conversation, you go back to the dialogue because it's necessary. And I want us to challenge us to do the things that are necessary to get where we, as a family, as a community, as a world, need to go. So what race are you in? I'm in the race. I'm in it to win it too. I'm in this race to win and to do my part. I'm not going to be here forever. You're not going to be here forever. I want to keep going and extrapolating out into these track and field analogies. But hey, this is so long of a race. It's it's a relay. At some point, I've grabbed a baton from someone else, and at a certain point, I'm going to pass it on to someone else. But I want to have done my part to advance the cause while I was here and while I had the baton in my hand. But it's going to take me intention to do that, and even hurting myself and putting myself in vulnerable places to do that in a successful way. So I'm not done, because I could go on, but I just want to open up, if it's okay, Wendy, you can facilitate it however you'd like. But just for some more conversation, and we can be as direct and explicit as we need to for this dialogue today.
Everybody, you can also send a private chat message to Curtis in the chat box below, directly to him, if there's something that you're being shy about, that you have a question or comment regarding, so that it could be a little bit more private, because I know sometimes it's sticky, all these things. I know for me, my race is, I want to leave a legacy. I want to leave 2 children. I have a special needs child and a wonderful boy as well. And the legacy I leave is, I want them to have this beautiful tolerance and acceptance for everybody and everything, and respect the journey, and that everybody has their own journey. And that starts with that teaching at home. So for me, that's my race, is my legacy. And what does that look like? So of course, there's no book or right or wrong way to do this. So we have to just be a little bit more proactive about understanding everybody and everything going on, and having these conversations. So
let me throw this out, Wendy. Let me interject real quick, because that's what I do. I want to shift our thinking a bit. Oftentimes we say get out of your comfort zone. I try to say expand your comfort zone, because the more places you're comfortable, the more effective you can be. The more uncomfortable I am, I'm probably not going to give you my best stuff, right? I'm comfortable in this Zoom setting because I can go. I'm comfortable in front of 500 people or 5 people. That's just, I've over time expanded that, right? And become more comfortable in different areas. So here's what I want us to do, and I'll throw this out for consideration. I give no demands at all, but let's be less tolerant. because I don't want to be tolerated. How many of you in a relationship want to be tolerated by your spouse, your significant other? I know that's a phrase that in a term that we have used historically, that we need to be more tolerant. To me, at least I'll put my perspective on what tolerance means. I'll put up with you while I have to. You notice I rolled my neck like my mom used to back in the day. I'll put up with you. I'll tolerate you. But that doesn't mean that I'm feeling connected to you, that I'm feeling that we have some commonalities that we can grow from. And so we have to move. Toleration is good on some, or tolerating is good on one level, but maybe that's an initial step.
Right.
And here's maybe what we need to tolerate is tolerate our discomfort till we become comfortable. And so I want us to expand. Anytime that we're sharing, I want us to get a nugget, at least one nugget we can take away that's going to make us think a little bit differently. And so don't tolerate me. Mary, don't tolerate me. Embrace me as much as you can. You know what I mean, Jessica? Don't tolerate your children, because you don't really love what you tolerate. You put up with what you tolerate. And it's easy when you stop tolerating it, it's easy to mistreat it at the same time. Okay, I'm done with that.
All right. So that being said, I know for me out here, I live in the country. There is not a lot of diversity in my community whatsoever. I want to say probably none. Jessica, is there any diversity in our community? Like 1-2 families, that's it. And so I am hoping that we can have some collaboration in Erie where we can start to fix that kind of an issue and bring multiple cultures together and learn from one another. And especially with that, like between 14 and 23-year-old age bracket, where we can make the most effective change per se. And how do we go about doing that? And what does that look like, do you think? Because I know you're smack dab in the middle over there with your church and of the city. What does that look like? How can we do that? How can we move this into something a little bit broader and bigger and affect real change?
Well, I think one thing is that it's important that we talk about diversity. We talk about more than ethnic diversity, right?
Right.
So if I'm in Corey or in Girard or Platia somewhere, right? It may not be a lot of Black folks and Hispanic folks out there, but there's a lot of diversity in personality, a lot of diversity in socioeconomic status, a lot of diversity in lifestyle. Man, when I was in Girard a couple years ago, man, I was at a friend's house, and man, all I heard was gunshots. Pow, 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 pow. I'm like, what in the world? I'm a brother from the city. I'm ducking. You hear gunshots, you ain't supposed to hear gunshots. You know what I mean? I'm not at the shooting range, right?
Right.
I ducked, literally ducked. Like, whoa, what's going on? And the friend, a group of us were out there. And they're right down the road. They got a shooting range right down the road. And I'm thinking, oh, there's a gun club? No, their backyard.
That just
what
happened.
In the world just happened? You know what I mean? That's diversity. That person who might have the same skin tone and hue, that's the only thing they got in common with another white person in Corey or in Girard or in Edinburgh. So I want to diversify the idea of diversity, right? Because injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Because there's a lot of white folks that's out there in the country saying, them hillbillies down there, because you live closer to town. They live out down by the creek somewhere, and you know what I'm saying? And I'm being lighthearted because many a truth is told in a joke, but I think it's important. And you know, it's not just color, skin tone diversity. We have to have gender diversity, socioeconomic diversity, educational diversity. All of those things coming to the table broadens the perspectives that are brought to the problem. Because poverty is not a Black issue or an inner city issue. Poverty trend is out in the country as well, right? Out in the rural areas. It might look different. I know Jill is on here. She's probably going to yell at me later, but I'm just going to be candid for a moment. Kids in the city smoke marijuana just like kids in the country smoke marijuana.
Yes.
The kids in the city do it in the alley. The kids in the country do it by the garage. They do it back by the shed, by the barn. I mean, not the garage, by the barn. They're doing it out there with yeah. So the issue is, here's what I think we can do, maybe, is acknowledge our differences, but be intentional about seeking out our commonalities. We all know how we're different, but at the end of the day, I'm not really sure how we're alike. And when I can begin to understand how we're alike, despite the differences, and watch this, even sometimes because of the differences, because what gets some people to this place of passion and wanting justice comes from different angles, but they end up in the same place. And so I need to know what are our commonalities that will increase the level of diversity and broaden our mindset of what it means to be diverse. Because if you have a room, and I'll stop with that answer, but if you have a room full of 20 people and all of them are millionaires, Black, white, Hispanic, Native American, Indian, Asian, and they're all multimillionaires, they might have a color diversity, but they don't have a experiential diversity and how to live in everyday life. And so we need to have some broke people in the room. Hopefully I'm not one of those people, but we want to get the diversity of people in the room, right? And expand our concept of diversity and inclusion.
Curtis, I also think that when we find people with different diversities, if we can learn from each other, the differences, it opens up your mind so much more. There's so many people that you think that are, maybe you feel that they aren't equal to you, but then when you get to know them on a one-to-one basis, you realize that they have so much more to offer than you even thought from your first impression.
Absolutely.
So it's just getting to know people, and that changes the diversity of everybody.
Absolutely. And that's a great point, Norma, because excuse me, again, we have to be intentional. Education is an intentional effort. Education is an intentional process. And we have to be willing to learn from one another. And watch this, even learn about ourselves from one another. Sometimes I don't know how biased I am in an area until I'm exposed to something new. And I'm being told, man, wait a minute, that was kind of edgy. You know, that was like borderline racist. You know what I mean? Or disrespectful. I might say, I've got 8 brothers, and it was 8 boys in a row. My parents had 9 boys, 8 boys in a row. We were rough and tumble with each other, said things to each other. But when our first sister came, we tried to treat her like one of the boys and ended up swinging her around, pulled her shoulder out of the socket. And we just, we were saying things that boys said to each other that maybe was offensive to my little sister. We just didn't know it. You know what I mean? And so I think the more we're around an inclusive group of people, the more we learn from each other, the more we learn about ourselves, and the more we learn what's okay to say. Sometimes you don't know what's okay to say till you say the wrong thing. Sometimes you don't know what's okay to do until you do the wrong thing. And then someone has the courage to push back and say, hey, that's not okay. I'll tell a quick story. When I was in college, there were some challenging times on campus, and ended up being like kind of racial, and to use that term, but racial in nature. And I was pretty, I was pretty involved with everyone. That's kind of just always been my personality. But I was a football player, so that always bridged, athletes kind of bridge and cross different boundaries. And so there were some of my white friends and football teammates that were saying some really like crazy derogatory things about some other African-American and Black young men that were on campus that happened to not be on the football team. So they didn't know them like that. And so I'm sitting here and I'm hearing what they're saying. I'm like, do you realize what you just said? I said, do you see that I'm African-American, I'm Black just like them? And you're gonna say that about them and think I'm gonna just take that? This was a point when I was a little bit militant. I was getting ready to, go to another level. And he said something to me, a couple of guys, they said to me, Curtis, but you're not like them. That was, that may be new to some of you and maybe not new to some others on this call, but that bothered me. That was 20 years ago plus. That bothered me then. And what I've figured out over time is that what he really meant, and I'm giving the benefit of the doubt, is what he really meant. I don't know them like that. So it's easy for me to vilify and be negative, because if I would have said or done some of the same things that those individual brothers did, but they knew me, then we would have had a dialogue about it. So you're not like them, even though he probably didn't mean it this aware and enlightened as I'm giving it to us today. It really was about, he didn't know them. He had no rapport with them. And so when you do something and you see something in a place where you don't have rapport, it's easy to, again, be negative or vilify. Because another little caveat or another little point is that I said, I agree with what they said. And he still said, but you're not like them. And I learned that they meant they didn't know them, but they knew me. They knew my heart. They knew what I was about. And even when I said things that made them uncomfortable, they knew my heart. And as white men and black women, and we can get all the variations, Latino men and women, all of our variations, we have to have the courage to hold each other accountable, and then be able to receive that accountability from each other to say, I didn't know that, but thank you for letting me know, and I can adjust myself accordingly. You know what I mean? And so I think this is all that work. This is the race. This is the group in the middle bumping each other, but not pushing each other off and disqualifying them. This is us working together and jockeying to make ourselves as successful as possible, but not at the expense and the disposure of other people. And so, again, we have to learn from each other, grow with each other, learn about ourselves, but education is an intentional effort, and we have to be intentional about it.
Absolutely. So there's going to be a part 2 to your series, correct? We're going to talk about where do we go? We're going to have more specific discussion about that, right? Next.
Yeah.
We're going to be doing that on July 1st, right? Because this next Wednesday we have SafeNet. So July 24th we have SafeNet that's going to come talk about programming on Wonderful Wednesdays with Wendi. And then July 1st we're going to be back with Curtis on part 2 of this series, and we will go part 3, part 4 if necessary, as long as the discussion is flowing and we are making progress, right?
I'm down with that. This is, I think for many of us on this call, because we're on this call, and this is just an example of other conversations we're all having in our own worlds outside of this Zoom session. And so this is a lifetime call for me, and I think for all of us in one way, shape, or form, whether we're leading the pack, whether they're in the midst of the pack, or whether we're lagging behind, we're still in the same race. And so I think it's important to recognize that and keep doing the work that's necessary. I appreciate the opportunity to share my perspective. As a Black man, my experience is not the only Black experience. And I want to say that too. It's important. I can't speak for everyone that looks like me, hence the point of diversity and inclusion, but I can give you what I've got. And I think what I've got is valuable. I think what we all share and what we have on this call and other sessions will be important and valuable as well. And I will say this real quick. Take another look. And that's my philosophical end. Take another look. Another look at what? Everything. Yourself, your surroundings, your environment, your upbringing, your educational attainment level. Take a look at everything. Look at it again. Because when you look at it again, you'll see something that you missed the last time. Look at someone that you discarded already in your mind. You might still say hi. Hey, what's up? How you doing? Hope you have a great, blessed day. But you really have dismissed them in your mind. Look at them again. I'm doing that personally, and I say that because I'm doing that. There's some things that happened in our city recently, and some responses to them, and I'm like, what? And many of us are like, what or what? I agree, whatever it might be. But I'm looking at it again. Why? Because my perspective isn't the only perspective. And if I can reassess and look at it again, it'll give me a broader perspective, which will help me to understand where other people's mindset is. So look at it again. Again, I appreciate the opportunity to be on Wednesdays with Wendi. I don't know how wonderful they are, but you know, they're Wednesdays with Wendi, and I'll take it. But here's the thing, family: don't be nervous about being direct in subsequent sessions. If it's just one more after today, if you have a direct question, ask the question, because it's like, if you don't know what ingredient you're missing in the recipe, it'll never come out right. You know what I mean? It'll never come out right. It will always be off, and our cake will never rise or never taste proper if we don't ask for that missing ingredient. If you don't know it, the only bad question to ask or stupid question the stupid question, in my opinion, is the one you don't ask when you need the information. I'll say that more clearly. The only stupid question that there is out there is the one you don't ask if you don't have the information that question can get you. And so let's ask the questions, let's do the work, let's be honest and intentional, and let's keep learning from each other and about ourselves. And I look forward to July 1st.
Anybody have a last minute question? No, actually, I need two or we can't go, because that's my new thing. Yeah. Sorry, let's unmute you.
I'm more talking about, because I know, like, to me, I'm looking at the world as like the next generation, and with, I'll say bicultural, because I'm like, to me, it's not really, I think everybody is the same race, we're all humans. But like, my sons are Puerto Rican and Black. Yes. And for me, that's very important that we always celebrate both. Like, they know everything, because their father and me, I'm like, we're still together. He's my life partner. We've been together 18 years. And we have been it's been very important for us to both celebrate both our sides. Like, and for me being Puerto Rican, I came up from a very, I guess, special family, I would say, because my parents always made sure that we celebrated everything that made you Puerto Rican, African roots, Spanish roots, your Taino Indian roots. And for them, it was very important, because if you saw my mom on the street and saw my dad, you would think that they were an interracial couple, because my dad is darker than me with curly hair, and my mom is super light skinned with green eyes and blonde hair. So in Puerto Rico, they had a lot of issues with people looking at them and telling, because even within, people don't know, I don't know if people know that a lot, but Latino culture has a lot of racial disparity and a lot of racial issues within its own culture. Like, if you're lighter skinned, you're better. If you're darker skinned, you're not as good. And there was that within that culture itself. Mm-hmm. So my parents experienced that and would never want us to. So their thing was that they have always been a very loving, open family. You love who you love, no matter the race, the sex, whatever. They have always been so accepting because of what they went through. Right. Even when they got here, one of my mom's comments was that she would go to a restaurant and her and my dad would be there, and people would first think they were interracial. And the minute they start to speak and they heard the accent, she's like, then we just disappeared. They didn't even care about us no more, because we didn't even sound like it was a Hispanic thing in the 70s. Oh, they're like, oh, you don't even matter because you're Hispanic. Bye. So so for us, it was very important to always celebrate everything. And I think as we see more of that happening, like, there is those relationships are more commonplace now. There are a huge amount of children who are biracial, bicultural, however you want to say it. Yep. And I think that I'm hoping for it to become easier for them to be able to not have to pick a side. Like, it should not be because I look black that I'm black, and because and I don't belong to white. But if I look, especially for people who are fair skinned, who may have some of the features, but the fair skinned that are really looking mixed, and those kids always say that they have such a hard time because they're not accepted by either side. And my thing is to sort of break that. Like, we have to start looking at people, because I'm like, we're coming up where it's just going to continue to happen. People are, and thank God that our younger generation is just learning to love. Like, they don't look at the color of your skin particularly. They look at common interests. They look at what you bring to them and how your heart is over, oh, like, you're this color, you're that color, it's the beliefs that they have in their core that they look at more. And I think we have to come and embrace that more. Like, as older people, I'm in my 40s. So I always tell my kids, I'm like, for me, we got the looks, me and their dad. I'm like, even in my day, people looked at me. Mm-hmm. I have always been very open as a person. So I've always had friends of every race, but I had Black women who would tell me, like, why are you with our men? Like, why couldn't you go for a Latino? Or I've had Latina women tell me, why did you have to go out with the African-American man? It's who I love. It had nothing to do. We just have very inline morals, and the way we believe things was very in line. And that's how we matched up. It was never about he was dark or he was light. It was what I saw in him and what he saw in me. And I think that that's something that we have to bring, like, to me, older people to understand, because our generations, I think younger generations really are starting to understand that. And we have to continue to foster that and make sure that we don't, because I'm like, we cause those separations with what we teach. That's right. And I'm like, my question is, how do we get our generation to be more open and accepting to that and bring them forward so that we nurture that in the next generation.
Yeah, I think again, my response to that, we're in the same generation. I'm in my mid 40s. I know I don't look it, you know, I understand that. But I'll leave it open-ended, older or younger. But again, I think it goes back to being intentional, like what you describe, how you describe with your family and your parents, like celebrating everything about you. And here's the thing, it's okay to celebrate, you know, the African American or the African component of your heritage, the Latino component of your heritage. Watch this, the German component of your heritage, the Polish component, because most of us on this call are some variation of something. Like this, maybe, I don't know, but you might be like both parents Polish with nobody else, just a Polish line coming all the way through. My grandfather is a white man from Memphis, my dad's father. My grandmother, her mother was Native American from Georgia. My grandmother on my father's side is a dark-skinned, beautiful dark-skinned woman who now lives in Pasadena, California, but was raised in Memphis, Tennessee. When you see me, you see a whole lot going up in there. I can't hate white people because that's like hating a portion of me. I can't hate anyone because I come from all of us. And so I guess my point is to be intentional. And a lot of times with our generation, what our parents did, because they came from a generation in you know, again, we're in the 40s, or our parents were probably in their 60s, 70s. Excuse me, they came from a generation where it was overt. You're white, you're black, you drink here, you drink there. And so they still brought some of that in our raising. My grandmother told me a story one time. She said that downtown Erie, there were in the Boston store, when there was a big thing, the Boston store was like a big thing down there. There was a store in her day when a black person walked in, okay, I won't say the word, but there was a parrot that would say, N-word, N-word came in, N-word came in, and you know what the N-word was. This was like the climate they grew up in. So what happened was our parents told us a little bit more than their parents told them, but they didn't let it all the way rip. We have to let it rip, because if we don't, we'll do two things. One, we'll limit the uniqueness and the beauty of the heritage or whatever's perspective of our children is there, but also we'll make them naive to the world that they're growing up in. And I think the worst thing that we can do for our children is to have them walk unprepared. Unprepared, one, that people will see you in one way and you have to understand who you are so you can combat that in the right way, but also sending them into the world not knowing where they come from, not knowing the uniqueness of your blackness and your Latino-ness and your whatever you bring. And I don't know if that's a word, I just made it up, I'll coin it. But you got to know who you are from that perspective as well. Not be limited by it, but it's celebrate. Like I said, the Italian Man of the Year and the Polish Woman of the Year, like those are festivals that are, those things happen in Erie. Do you know what I mean? The Latino Festival and Parade, we've done that for a couple of years in Erie. We need to do more of those types of things to celebrate and make it not in the closet, but make it open for everyone to be able to embrace. So that intentionality with raising our children, the intentionality of saying, and watch this, I promise I'm done, Wendy. I know where I'm overtime. I'm always overtime, but it's okay. I won't charge you any extra for these extra moments and comments. No, I'm just teasing. But watch this. It's okay for me as a black man to stand up and say, I'm proud of my blackness. Like actually, especially in the climate we're in now, like that's right on. You know what I mean? But am I okay enough to see, I'll use Amber, I probably shouldn't put her on the spot, but I will. But if Amber stood up in the same meeting and said, I'm proud of my whiteness, how is she going to be received? Things that make, Arsenio Hall said, things that make you go, I have to be as comfortable with her being proud of her whiteness as I am with me being proud of my blackness and you being proud of your Latino culture and heritage. We have to allow all of us to be proud of where we come from so that we can move forward together to make a world that all of our children don't have to worry about some of the things that we have been living through. And if it's okay for me to represent, it's got to be okay for you to represent. Just a few thoughts, I guess.
Good thoughts to wrap that up on. So that being said, we're going to continue this conversation on July 1st. I look forward to it. I hope you all can make it. Once again, if you have not placed your email address in the chat box for Jessica, if you could do that now, I would greatly appreciate it. So you can do that Survey Monkey. It'll take less than 2 minutes. It's painless, I promise. But that helps Mission Empower continue to bring programming such as this to your computer. So, which is really cool, actually. Thank you, Curtis, for coming on. I thought that it was a very good conversation, a great way to start off things. And I look forward to seeing you on July 1st as we continue. Right. Okay.
My pleasure. Take care, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. And thanks for participating. Have a great day. Bye.
Have a good day.
Bye.